Hey, Thomas from Field Tennis. In one of my previous videos I was explaining the concept of slapping when I was talking about how to hit the ball with topspin, but not really brush on it, but more like slap and roll the ball. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put a card above and link in the description. The video has received quite a lot of comments and questions, and in this video I want to clarify the concept of slapping so that you don't misinterpret what I'm saying and that you don't do something wrong. So I'm going to demonstrate a few forehands now with my assistant Kaya feeding me some balls again, and I'm gonna slap the ball a little bit here to exaggerate that you understand what I mean by slapping. And you can see from the back camera how nicely the ball goes out of the racket with a very short movement into the ball and how much power I get just from wrist action. So when I hit a forehand, this is kind of hidden inside. You might not see it because my forehand or forehand of a pro player is very smooth. It's very continuous, and so you kind of more just see the whole motion. And when you see kind of the whole motion, you don't see the wrist action there. So right now I didn't do it, and that's why the ball doesn't go so well. So you might think that this is kind of a forehand. Now it goes well because I hit the sweet spot all the time, but like your mental image is that this is with the arm and you're trying to hit more with the arm, and you don't see that inside I hit the ball with my hand. So when I put this inside the whole shot, then I have very good acceleration into the ball. And I have control. So the reason why I make a long smooth stroke, Mr. Murphy's law always comes in when it shouldn't. When I talk about control, I miss. So what helps me control the stroke is more these long smooth motions, and using my hand the right way to slap the ball gives me a very good source of power. It shoots the ball really nicely out of the racket. So of course this applies to all ground strokes. I'm just demonstrating first from the forehand side, but we have exactly the same principle on the two-handed backhand, and on the one-handed backhand we accelerate into the ball and we get that very nice power. So just a quick refresher. This is again the foundation. Right now I'm just hitting the ball very flat, just that you see very clearly the action. And if I want to hit with topspin, I just do this upwards. So I'm still slapping the ball. I'm slapping the ball, but I go up on the ball, and that's how you create a nicely penetrating topspin instead of just brushing up on the ball, going down and up. And now I have a lot of topspin and the ball goes nowhere, as you can see from the back camera. So this is what troubles a lot of players. When they just think up, up, up and brushing, they do hit the ball with topspin, but it goes nowhere. So brushing, in my opinion, is not a good teaching model, or even if you do use it, you have to get out of that very quickly. Just use it for exaggeration, and then you have to move on and explain to the player in a different way how to hit the ball in a more penetrating way. So let me demonstrate the slapping principle here at the net. So slapping means that when you hit like this, if you picture like a rug, in the old times our grandmothers, they put a rug on a big bar and they would just use like a plastic rubber racket, so to speak, to dust it off. That's how you need to hit a forehand or backhand. You need to soften your wrist and you need to hit the rug like this, and that's the principle of slapping. When you're not slapping, you lock the wrist. You lock the wrist, you don't use the wrist, and you just go back and forth like this. You go back forward. That's not slapping, that's pushing. So when you lock the wrist and you go forward, whether you turn your hips or not, and you come like this into the ball, that's not slapping. Slapping means that you relax the wrist. When your wrist came into the full wrist leg, you will see also from the back view, the wrist comes into full wrist leg. So when we come into the contact, we don't stay in the full wrist leg, the wrist comes out a little bit. It does not come out fully, which I will show you later, but it does come out a little bit, and with this action we accelerate into the ball. So the same applies. So we'll not move the camera, but just the same applies to the one-handed backhand. We do the same, and the wrist comes a little bit out of this position to hit the ball, but obviously it does not come out like this or like this. it just comes out to hit the ball, and then we stabilize it, and same is for two-handed backhand. We accelerate and we slap. We use the levers on the two-handed backhand and we hit into the ball. So one more thing, that you don't misinterpret slapping. When I say slap the ball, I'm just explaining the action of the wrist. I'm not talking about power. So do not immediately associate that slapping the ball means hitting the ball with a lot of power. I can slap the ball like this. That's also slapping. I'm just explaining the wrist action so that you don't lock the wrist, because if you lock the wrist and you go forward, that's not slapping, that's pushing. So that's what I try to differentiate and explain to my students when I teach them what it means to slap. So this is also a slap. I slap the ball when I play mini tennis. I'm gonna try record a little bit later playing with Kaya, and I slap the ball very gently. My wrist is always one way or another a little bit active, and I gently play the ball, whether with forehand or backhand. I don't lock the wrist and push the ball over. The wrist is active, and when the ball comes, I hit the ball a little bit with my hand, and that is a slapping principle, which is the same as here. So this one is very forceful, and this one is not forceful, it's just more gentle. So slapping does not automatically suggest a high level of force. I'm just explaining the way the wrist moves, because for many players the wrist does not move the right way. They lock it too much and then they have no action into the ball like this, and then they lose on this source of power. So now I'm playing here with Kaya mini tennis. So you have two camera angles, one is here from the side, one is from behind, that you see how I control the ball nicely. I'm gonna try and show you in slow motion from side view later on, that you see that I'm slapping the ball very gently. You can see that my hand is always working a little bit. Even on the backhand, same principle. I go back and I hit a bit with the hand. If I don't use my hand, so let's say I'm pushing, then I would play like this. That would be a push, and now I am not slapping, I completely locked my wrist and I'm pushing the ball, right? So again, I'm just explaining the principle of slapping, that you don't think that has to be a forceful action. That is a very gentle action. I lay back my wrist, and when I'm hitting the ball, the wrist comes a little bit out, and you can see how nicely the ball bounces. I'm just using the trampoline effect of the racket. Our rackets are trampolines, and if you know that it's a trampoline, then you bounce the ball out a little bit. You can see that if I bounce the ball like this, it takes very little wrist action to make the ball go somewhere. You just need to time it right, and you just pop the ball a little bit. And in the same way, when you play tennis, mini tennis, I'm just showing you mini tennis as an exaggeration. Of course, I use the slapping motion very gently. I use it very gently to hit the ball, so that you don't think that slapping means something very forceful. So let me show you what slap is not, what is not the right way of slapping. If you misinterpret again what slapping is, so you might think that the wrist goes, so if Kaya throws me a ball, and the wrist goes like this all the way through, and you get into this bulge, that's not what slapping is. So that's not what I'm asking you to do. So you can even like injure yourself in the long term if you keep hitting like this and you interpret the instruction or the idea of slapping and going like this all the way. Now the wrist goes from this fully laid back position, it might go all the way here to neutral position. So you might see from the back view, it's kind of a neutral position of the wrist, and then the wrist does not continue this way, but the arm turns around, there's some kind of pronation going on, the shoulder rotates and so on, so the racket goes here, not here, right? So if I were to hit the ball like this with the follow through, then of course you can do wrong, but as soon as you swing upwards, in most cases, you swing upwards, you want to hit the ball go up, then your arm starts to turn a little bit and it starts to push the wrist in the right direction. So even though I hit the ball like this with my hand, I go into the ball, so I slap the ball, I can accelerate, let's say, more. I go here, then I train my wrist, I don't allow it, it's just a matter of training. I don't allow it to go this way, I just turn it this way depending on the grip. Western grips are going to turn the wrist more Eastern or continental, they're going to turn it way less. So here I am somewhere between Eastern and semi-Western, a bit more Eastern. and I can just go to this side and the wrist can stay like this. So this is like very basic way of hitting the ball, not like super advanced, but I play like that all the time. I don't need super heavy topspin. If I use heavy topspin, I will use my wrist more and I might relax a little bit more here. But just for like simple technical understanding, what is the right wrist action here when I'm hitting? You hit the ball, the wrist comes out to maybe about neutral position. Here was very laid back, neutral, and then it turns around this way, and that's how you control the racket head. So you hit, you come here, and that is a very controlled motion. So I'm holding here my arm so that it's kind of like really fixed, that you see here, the wrist comes out a little bit and I go like this. If the wrist does not come out, so if I don't slap the ball, so this is slapping, I have very good acceleration. You will see also from the back view how I can easily pop the ball. I just go pop like this. But if I'm not slapping, if the wrist is very tight, you have a wrist leg and you go like this, the ball goes nowhere. Right? It's very stiff. You don't get any racket speed into the ball, and then you can of course push the ball over, but it's a very weak shot. So you have to release the racket head into the ball. You have to release it, then you have to control it, and this is the basic action of the wrist. You come to this position. That's why it's good to teach, for example, players to catch the racket. They will very likely come here with the wrist and they will control the wrist slap so that it doesn't get out of control like this, that the player also doesn't misinterpret that they think this is the slap and they end up like this with a bulge. First of all, they will lose control of the ball, and secondly, they will injure themselves in the long term if they keep doing this, right? So when you're hitting, this has to turn around. So that's how you tame or you control the slap. You slap into the ball. So you slap into the ball and you are going this way, and that's how you tame it. So you will see also from the back view how I control the ball really well. That way you can see this finish, and that is the basic function of the wrist action on the forehand. So obviously they will change a bit depending on the style. Are you driving the elbow like this? What's your grip and so on? But this is just to clarify. The slapping into the ball can be very gentle. So when I rally with my students, I of course have to play very gentle with them, not too fast. And I'm always using my hand to hit the ball. So there's always a slapping, almost always a slapping motion, and I control, and you can see how the wrist comes to this side. So hopefully this clarifies the slapping principle, the way we need to release the wrist into the ball so that we get good power, and in what way we need to control the wrist at the beginning when the player is not very skilled. This is a very good fundamental checkpoint to end up like this and not like this. So I see a lot of players when they come for lessons, one more Kaya, they come for lessons, they hit and their wrist goes like this and they don't have no stability at the end of the forehand. Maybe they see Alcaraz or I don't know who, they see this kind of finish, or they just kind of release the racket too much and then they don't have good control, because likely when they're hitting the ball they're releasing the wrist too much. So we are walking a very fine line between loosening the wrist too much. If we loosen up the wrist too much and we're kind of going like this, we lose control. If we don't loosen up the wrist at all, then we have no power, so we're just pushing the ball like this. So we need to learn how to hit the ball with the hand. We accelerate with the slap, and then we control that with this turn. So one way is to catch the racket. That's my preferred way of teaching. We come here, we slap, we come here, and we control the ball. So that's this fine line of balance between not releasing the wrist too much and still using it to get this extra effortless power.